Welcome to Damn It, Jim, the podcast.
Dana, I just thought for old time's sake, I should just interrupt you right now and just just get the ramble jar going. I think that's what we should do.
Welcome to Damn It, Jim, the podcast. It's the end of season 3, which means it's also the end of the series. I'm Dana Smith. I'll be your captain on this adventure. And with me, as always, our good friend, the Vice Admiral of Skullduggery, Dan Calzaretta. Good evening, Dan.
Dana, once again, I am flabbergasted, amazed, and blown away that we actually made it through the entire series.
We did it. We did what we didn't even think we could do.
Yeah.
And we're not done yet. As we announced before, we're going to do the movies.
That's right.
But let's wrap up first season 3 and basically the whole series. We got to talk. You can't talk about season 3 without talking about the whole series.
Right. Let's do it.
Season 3 was in the books. It's kind of a tough season.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, I liked Let That Be Your Last Battlefield.
That was the black and white guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a great show, but it's season 3. It's got some things. So that's my start is Let That Be Your Last Battlefield.
Well, that one's not on my list, Dana, but I loved Frank Gorshin in that episode.
And that's a big reason why I liked it as well. And the ending, the whole planet was destroyed, but and they just continued fighting. How about you? What's your number 5?
I know we're not going to agree on this one as well. Savage Curtain, Dana.
Whoa.
I know. I know you didn't like it. But the more I thought about it, I really love the idea of Lincoln coming back and battling like these space bad guys. I just thought it was great. And I also got to say, the Talking Rock, I know the Talking Rock didn't do it for you, but when he was clicking his like claw hands thing, I just thought that was awesome. Again, we're talking season 3, Dana, but that's my number 5.
My 4th one is the Tholian Web.
Okay.
I really like all the drama that's put into it. They rehash some things from other episodes, but there's the ghost ship and of course the Tholians and stuff. So it just had a lot going on. And Kirk he was kind of like the main focus in some ways, but you didn't have to deal with them the whole time. Okay, so what's your number 4?
Spectre of the Gun. I really liked that ethereal nature of the episode.
Yeah.
The dreamlike quality to it. That's my number 4, Dana.
Okay, number 3, I have Elan of Troyes.
Okay.
I liked her character. I liked, what they were having to deal with and the struggle and the ambassador guy, and stuff. So some really neat things there. One of the few times in season 3 that it was a different kind of episode, something we hadn't seen before.
Right.
Okay, what's your number 3?
My number 3 was your number 4, the Tholian Web.
Okay.
I like that one for the reasons you said, but also because I think that the relationship between McCoy and Spock gets more developed in that episode. Yeah. And they had to work together to save Kirk. I mean, although they may have later regretted doing that in the rest of season 3. But that's why I like that one, Dana.
My number 2, All Our Yesterdays. Just, I like the time travel thing. Like I said, I think it could have been a double episode. But again, there's the Spock and McCoy challenge, Kirk trying to save his friends. Just a lot of good things in that. How about you? What's your number 2?
My number 2, Dana, was the Enterprise incident.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I like that episode because it was based on a real event, the USS Pueblo, when it was captured by North Korea. Yep. But I also like the really strong female commander on the Romulan ship on that episode. By the way, we should let people know, Dana, we do not know what the other person has written down for these things.
Yeah.
This is all new to both of us.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like usual. We don't know what the other person thinks at all. So my number 1 is the Enterprise incident.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Spock wooing a Romulan officer, commander of a ship, and Kirk getting dressed up as a Romulan. There's a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah.
And your best of season 3, what's that?
Well, we just flipped number 2 and 1. Mine was All Our Yesterdays, Dana, for the reasons you mentioned, but also Spock finally gets a love interest in that episode.
Yeah.
Not one like This Side of Paradise where some plant or whatever shoots him and he falls in love because of that. He really does fall in love with Zarabeth. And then I love the concept of a library being used to transport people to different points in history. And you don't go and look up a book, you go and look up a time period.
Yeah.
In McCoy's case, he looked up the freaking frozen wasteland of nothingness. And then Kirk gets the woman who says stuff that I still, to this day, don't understand what the hell it was she was saying. So we had some that overlapped, right? I think All Yesterdays, the Enterprise incident, and the Tholian web. And then we had two that were different.
Yeah, well, I mean, that seems to fall along our normal path of, kind of being somewhat on the same page, but not quite. So,
Yeah.
So now we move on to the worst from season 3, Dan.
And this is what I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I think I've got 18 here.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. They all could probably be on there, but I limited myself to 5, Dana.
Oh, you're a better man than I. Okay, why don't you start off with your number 5?
Number 5 for me is The Way to Eden. Now, there are parts of this episode, Dana, I gotta say, I really liked because they are truly funny.
Yeah.
And I loved Charles Napier as Adam. I thought he was great. But the songs, they got that real 1960s weird psychedelic feel to them. Those are a little bizarre. And I guess to sum it up, all I have to say is Herbert, Herbert, Herbert. Dana, what's your 5th worst episode in season 3?
Wink of an eye.
Yeah.
So many things.
Yeah.
And it's, because there's so many bad shows in season 3, this was tough, but I thought I would start out with that. It wasn't even a good story. Let's move on.
Yeah, that sounds good.
What's your 4th one, Dan?
My 4th is The Empath. Dana, mimes.
Yeah.
Enough said. How about your 4th worst?
Mine is And the Children Shall Lead.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the annoying children to start with, and then you've got this quote unquote angel that they are following, and the angel can't act, and he seems to have, no real purpose other than for him to be annoying. And it just, children on the Enterprise, not a good thing. Down to 3. What's your 3rd one, Dan?
Yeah, well, it's And the Children Shall Lead. I mean, all the things that you said, Melvin Belli, I mean, he was a lawyer. What the hell was he doing in this episode? And you could only hope that when he was in a courtroom, he acted better than this episode, because if he didn't, every one of his clients would have been found guilty, Dana. He was that bad. And it was another shat fest. There was a lot of that going on.
Oh, yeah.
But like you said, the freaking kids, my God.
They should have all been put in the ion pod and jettisoned. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so many of them, we could cram so many of them in one little ion pod.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. Am I asking you now? I've already gotten lost.
Yeah, me too. I was just wondering. I was about ready to ask you. I was like, wait a minute. Nope.
No, I think I have to ask you. And we're looking at number 2 now. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. What was the number 2 of season 3 for you, Dana?
Oh, wait a minute. No, it's number 3 for me.
No, number 3. Shit. See, I can't remember where we are. Okay. Number 3. Okay. I'm going to ask you about this number 3 thing right now. Dana, what about number 3 for you?
Turnabout Intruder, the very last episode of the series. You would think that maybe it's impossible for there to be worse shows than this. In my mind, there are. There's some things in it that are okay, but there's so many things in there that aren't, and just things that go against everything else they've done in the series. Like you mentioned, how is it they listen to Scotty and McCoy out in the hall, but when they have bad people on the ship, they don't listen to them? A lot of bad things in there. Okay, Dan, on to number 2. What is your second to worst one?
I kind of forgot about Turnabout Intruder, Dana. It's not on my list, actually. That's kind of funny. But for me, it was the Paradise Syndrome. Well, the series itself was progressive in many ways, right? This episode, however, perpetuates that white man as the savior kind of trope with the Native Americans who are on this planet. And also, it still bugs me, Dana. Why didn't they beam Miramani up to the ship so they could save her? Like, she didn't even have a bruise. I know there's internal injuries that can kill you, but come on. They can fix that stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, look at all the things McCoy's done. He performed heart transplant or whatever it was on Spock and his dad.
While smoking.
Yeah.
And then finally, with that episode, they never explained how the ship's engines got fixed.
Oh, that's right.
Now we're on to the worst episode, right?
No, now you asked me about number 2.
Oh, shit. Again? I've already messed it up. I thought I did ask you about... Okay. All right, here we go. My God. I have not been drinking tonight, and I have not donated blood today. So there's no excuse other than I'm just a dumb shit, Dana, apparently.
It's confusing.
Dana, how about your second worst episode in season 3?
The empath. As you said, the mime, the aliens doing the testing. What do you call it? The blacked out background, so you can't see that they're on a studio.
Yeah.
Just none of it made sense to me. Bothered me. And it still bothers me. And mime. That's all you got to say.
Right.
Okay, Dan, let's get to number 1. What is your number 1 worst from season 3?
I've got the feeling we probably have the same one here, Dana.
I am thinking we do too.
Okay, so on the count of 3, let's both say it at the same time. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Spock's brain. Yep, that's it.
Yeah. Oh, I could go on for weeks about this show. Yeah, just horrible.
Horrible. The only thing I wrote down as an explanation was brain and brain. What is brain?
Well, we talk about the worst character later on. That's one of the things we came up with.
Yeah.
And so I say the stupid women in Spock's brain.
There was also another line from that episode, Dana. It was something like "Morg or Imorg" or something. Do you remember that? What was that line?
Yeah, Imorgs were the men.
I think so. I don't remember.
Yeah. So
You're not Morg. You're not Imorg.
I'm not you, Morg, either. So it's
I want to go to a morgue after watching that episode.
Yeah. Like to take you to a morgue because I think your brain already beat us there.
Well, Dana, that was a good summary, I thought, of season 3. We had some that were similar, and we had a few that were not.
I want to talk a little bit about why season 3 had problems.
Yeah.
For starters, Star Trek had different writers in season 3, different producers. Both Gene Kuhn and Gene Roddenberry basically left the show.
Yeah.
Basically left Fred Freiberger in charge. They lost Dorothy Fontana, who was the story editor. They really needed somebody like that, to help out. Now, she wrote a couple episodes that got into season 3, but they screwed them up so bad. She insisted they change her name.
Yeah.
And so that tells you something.
Yeah, it tells you a lot. That's right.
All these things seem to affect the quality of the show. On top of that, the budget was cut, and then they moved the show to basically a dead zone. It was Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
I mean, obviously, it seems to me they were trying to kill it, right?
Yeah.
And the reason they didn't outright kill it probably was because they were worried about the fan mail that they were going to get again, just deluged.
Yeah. So I did a little research, and they ran against Judd for the Defense on ABC, which I think only lasted a couple of years, and the CBS Friday Night Movie on CBS. And while Roddenberry was still executive producer, it seems he was not heavily involved in the show. Like I said, Freiberger was a veteran TV producer, but he came in knowing nothing about Star Trek.
Right.
And he hired other writers who, again, knew less about Star Trek than he did.
Yeah.
So it was just like a disaster. Characters were often uneven. They did things against their normal behavior.
Well, how many times do we see that with Spock, especially?
And that's one of my examples is, Spock jamming with the space hippies.
Yeah, I know. It was out of character, but I thought it was hilarious at the same time.
McCoy seemed angrier. They didn't use Chekhov as much, didn't use Uhura as much.
Yeah, I mean, that was really obvious to me.
One of the things they said NBC didn't support the show, that they didn't understand. The executives at NBC didn't understand it. It was expensive to produce. At times it was provocative and attempted to be too deep for standard TV fare.
Right.
One of the things I noticed, you see more of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy together. If there's an away team, it's usually those three.
Yeah.
Really began to focus more on those guys.
Right.
Like a buddy show. Also, the away teams got smaller and crewmen weren't killed off as easily as they had been the first 2 seasons.
Yes, Dana. That was on my list of things I learned from season 3. It's like, what? Why not? Our count came to a staggering halt during season 3.
So you got anything else you want to add before we move on to our other things we want to cover here?
Yeah, so this is what I learned from season 3, Dana. 1, not enough red shirts died. 2, when good writers, producers, and directors leave the show, it tends to mostly suck. That's what I got out of season 3.
Yeah, well, I created a list of what we learned from season 3. I start off with don't let children on board the Enterprise.
Oh, number 1. Yes, I totally agree.
And then this would have applied to any season, but keep an eye on your guests, as 90% of them will find a way to take over the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Don't try to strangle a pile of molten rocks.
That's always good advice.
Aliens with bulbous heads are only interested in studying humans. And finally, Spock shouldn't sing.
So, Dana, in our podcast, I mean, from the very beginning, we didn't take ourselves seriously. We took the show seriously, but not to the point of like it was sacrosanct. We could make fun of it when it deserved it, right?
Yeah.
And so we would have funny things we would say, or we thought they were funny. We would ramble often. So for you, out of all 3 seasons, 79 episodes, what was the funniest bit or ramble in the entire series?
Wow, that's tough. We do a popcorn ramble during Bread and Circuses early on.
Yeah.
But I mean, man, the thing that I probably laughed the hardest at was the Megatu.
Well, how about if we play it, Dana?
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Here it is.
And Tyrese says, he was made my brother. And Nona smiles and says, and I am your wife, so I am his sister. What kind of fucked up family is this?
Well, I heard that too. I was like, what? Wait, does it work that way? Well, in Georgia, it works that way.
Well, it's because it really is your sister that you're, marrying.
Do we have any listeners in Georgia, Dana?
Not anymore.
Oh, man, they're coming after us.
Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Squeal like a Megatu, boy.
Squeal like a Wow. Dan, what do you think? What worked for you?
Well, there were so many. The funniest one for me, Dana, was the Doomsday Machine. If you remember, the ramble was about how astronauts poop in space. So here's that ramble. So, Dana, if they sent us a sample and said, you've got to wear it for like an entire day, would you be willing to do that?
Oh, yeah.
There was like no hesitation, Dana. There's like no hesitation there.
I dream of the day I go back to diapers. You know what I mean? It's just...
Okay, Dana, look, I'll take one for the team too. We'll both take one for the team. You and I will both agree that we'll wear a diaper. Not the same diaper, different diapers.
Yeah. Well, if it's the same, then I'm wearing it first. I'll send it to you. I got tears streaking down my face. I'm just dying here.
North Shore's only going to send us one each, probably. I mean, right? They're not going to send us multiple diapers.
Well, knowing how full of shit we are, they might send us a couple boxes.
Dana, this is the first time we brought up North Shore adult diapers, and we joked around about getting them as a sponsor. This is season 2, episode 6.
Wow.
Yeah.
Didn't realize we were that far ahead of ourselves.
We were. And they agreed to become sponsors, which I'm so happy that they did. I really believe in their product. I'm wearing one now.
Oh my God.
This podcast is being brought to you by North Shore Adult Diapers. North Shore offers reassuringly strong protection for even the heaviest control problems and can keep you dry and confident for up to 12 hours, so you can live your life with freedom and dignity.
Whether you are attending a baseball game, having dinner with friends, getting on a plane, or just sitting back listening to the Damn It Jim podcast, the last thing you want to worry about is incontinence. Don't be trapped at home. Be secure in knowing that North Shore has you covered with a true quality product.
You can even put North Shore's products to the test by requesting up to 6 product samples. And Dana, our listeners can use the code KIRK at checkout to receive $10 off their next order over $50. Go to northshore.com today to place your order or request product samples. This offer can be used only once per customer and may not be combined with other offers.
Dan, do you want to talk about the worst decision made by any character in the series?
Oh, you mean it's not the worst decision we've made?
People would say starting the idea of having a podcast. Yeah.
I know. Okay, so yeah, worst decision by any character. Okay. In Wolf in the Fold, Scotty is accused of murdering several women, as you recall. Kirk wants something called a regressive memory check done on Scotty. So he orders a female yeoman to come down to the planet where they are to conduct this test. And he sends the yeoman and Scotty into a room by themselves after he's already been accused of murdering, 3 women. And lo and behold, Dana, we hear a scream from the room and we go in there and the woman is found savagely murdered. I thought that was a horrible decision by Kirk.
Yeah, I've got that as well as one of many.
How about for you?
I have that same thing, but I mean, it's more Kirk not putting Scotty under arrest, confining him to his quarters, something to show he wasn't the murderer in Wolf in the Fold.
Yeah.
But I do have one I think you'll appreciate. The fact that Spock brought everyone back with him on the Galileo 7. I think that was just a bad decision. He should have just you guys go out there for the funeral. Scotty and I are going to be inside working on something. We'll flag you when the ship's ready to go and then take off. Because, all those people were treating him like shit. I would have left them all there.
Yeah, that's so true.
I think that's Spock's worst decision in any episode.
Do you have any other bad decisions you want to talk about?
Yeah, the whole cast for not fighting against the bad scripts in season 3. Okay, how about who or what was the best character in season 3?
Well, I think there are a lot of contenders for this title. There were good characters, even when there were horrible episodes. But for me, Dana, it was Dr. Joseph Mbinga, who was played by Booker Bradshaw. And he was a minor character, but I think they could have built several episodes around him. And, also, we got the term getting Mbinga'd from that character when he slapped the crap out of Spock in A Private Little War from season 2. And that phrase stuck with us for the rest of the series.
Yeah, ended up on the board game we got, too.
It did end up on the board game. That's true. That's true. How about for you?
Maybe it's obvious. Alon of Troyes. She was tough. She was so feminine, she was attractive, and she can shed tears to make a man just follow her every whim. I just thought she was one of the really strong characters in season 3, and she has her moments of weakness, and she's showed some vulnerability, but overall a really great character for the series. And again, it's one of those episodes where it was different from how we've been seeing women in this, with the exception of the Enterprise incident. I was really taken by that character again.
So, Dana, that was the best character in season 3. What was your choice for the worst?
The women in Spock's brain. And I don't mean the women he is thinking about. I mean, the stupid women. They were so frustrating. The episode would have been so much more interesting if the women knew why they were doing things instead of being controlled by this machine. It was just a stupid concept. It made no sense to me. What was the worst character for you in season 3?
This character comes out of one of my worst episodes, Dana, was Jem from the Empath. Again, I think part of the problem was male writers writing female characters. She was a very weak character. I mean, she didn't even speak, which was probably a good thing now that I think about it, because then I'm sure they would have given her the stupidest lines. God, the whole thing was like nails on a chalkboard for me, Dana. And then a character who never shows up, but we talked about a lot, was fucking Lamb Chop, Dana. Lamb Chop. God.
Can you order lamb at a restaurant? Do you like lamb?
Oh, yeah, I like lamb, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I like lamb chops.
Yeah.
I don't like Lamb Chop, a sock puppet. And the thing is, I like the Muppets a lot. I just don't like Lamb Chop.
I get it.
Let's move on.
Okay. So, Dan, looking back on all 3 seasons,
Yeah.
what's the number 1 best story for all 3 seasons?
Well, Dan, it was a little hard for me to just come up with one. So I put 5 into the top best list, I guess. And we can talk about maybe what some of those other ones were. But for me, and I think I'm not the only one who would say this, City on the Edge of Forever. There were a few other contenders that I really, really liked, but that one was number 1 for me, Dana. How about for you?
I think it's just always been a personal favorite of mine is the menagerie. There's just so much to that. You get the modern day crew, the Spock showing his loyalty to Pike, all this stuff, the aliens and the story with Pike and all that. And then the whole way it's all done. And it's a 2-part episode. That's always been a favorite of mine. And watching it again still made me have the same feeling.
Well, and it really sets the stage for a lot of what happens in the series, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you get the sense that Spock is a better friend than you realize.
Yeah. What are the other ones? So just give us a rundown. What are the other ones in your top 5?
City on the Edge of Forever.
Yeah.
And Mirror, Mirror, Balance of Terror, and The Ultimate Computer.
Mine are a little different. I had Balance of Terror as well. I had The Deadly Years, The Trouble with Tribbles, and Space Seed. And then, of course, City on the Edge of Forever was my number 1.
Okay, Dan, that was the easy one. What about the worst story across all 3 seasons?
Oh, this is easy for me, Dana. Actually, it's still, even after all the crap we went through in season 3, it's still The Alternative Factor, Dana. I mean, there are a lot of contenders, let's face it, but I think it was the worst, and it was the episode I had the most fun destroying.
No, I know you really enjoyed that. So
yeah, I did. How about for you? What was the worst episode out of all 79?
I still think it's Spock's brain. Okay, well, we saw a lot of romance, mostly Kirk, but there were others who had relationships. What do you think was the best love interest in the whole series?
For Kirk, the obvious answer would be Edith Keeler, I think, from The City on the Edge of Forever. However, who could forget all the women that Kirk has had love children with? I mean, including Nona from A Private Little War. And then there was Drusilla from Bread and Circuses. Remember her?
Yeah.
But lest we leave out Shauna from The Gamesters of Triskelion, also fondly known amongst our listeners as the Jiffy Pop Girl.
Yeah, quite appropriately.
What about for you for Kirk, Dana?
Edith Keeler, of course. Drusilla. I like Drusilla because she was just there to serve. I think Kirk served her. And, the one, I have to tell you, the one that bothered me the most, though, was Raina. I just didn't believe that he fell that much in love with her.
That quickly.
And he became like a different guy.
Yeah.
And I think that's bad writing.
Yeah, I forgot to put her on the list. That's absolutely true. What about for some of the other characters, Dana? Who else do you want to talk about?
I think for Spock was his romance with the Romulan commander. I think he had feelings.
In his pants.
For Scotty, I have the relationship with Lieutenant Romaine. He's like head over heels about her and stuff. And it just seemed, for a guy that's all about the engines and stuff and all the mechanical stuff, suddenly he finds this woman and he's just like he's fascinated by her as much as he is about anything technical. McCoy, of course, with For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky, the woman in that. That's all I got. How about you?
For McCoy, exactly the same that you just said. For Scotty, exactly the same, Lieutenant Romaine. For Spock, for me, it was Zarabeth from All Our Yesterdays. And I do think that there is a Spock love child. And then I did have one for Chekhov, and it was Sylvia from Spectre of the Gun.
Yeah.
And remember, he even died for her. Well, half died. But those are the ones I had.
This podcast is being brought to you by North Shore. North Shore offers premium incontinence products that can improve your quality of life. Managing incontinence can feel like a no-win scenario. Local drugstores often have a lack of options or sizes, or have cheap products that leak. North Shore is way different.
Dana, incontinence affects over 13 million people in the United States alone. I have a close friend with multiple sclerosis who uses North Shore diapers to help him lead a normal life.
North Shore products can empower you to live your life on your terms by providing maximum absorbency that allows you to be dry and confident. It allows you to be you. And Dan, our listeners can use the code KIRK at checkout to receive $10 off their next order over $50. Go to northshore.com today.
Okay, Dana, we talked about a lot of things. I'd like to hear from you. What did you learn from all of the original series.
I always go back to thinking about how I perceived this as a kid. One of the main things was diversity is a good thing. I think that was one of the things Roddenberry, I really want to give him credit for. People were always working together. And I thought that was really great. Other things I've learned is the prime directive is more like a theory than a hard, fast rule.
God, that is so true. Especially when Kirk's involved.
Brains left in a jar should be basically left alone.
Or dumped out.
Yeah. Finally, you can't be afraid to bluff when the odds are against you.
That's a good one.
Those are the things I learned from the original series. How about you, Dan? Did you learn anything?
Wait, I think there's a value judgment in that comment there, Dana. I did, Dana. For all its faults, Star Trek, the original series, points a way forward for the human race. If we can learn to love and accept each other, if we can continue to explore the vast unknown, if we can learn to believe in the inherent goodness of the human spirit, we may actually survive as a species. So, Dana, that's what we learned from all of the original series, but what surprised you most throughout all 3 seasons?
One of the things I was aware of but didn't pay attention to is the blatant sexualization of the women. I didn't absorb it like I did going back and watching it now and looking at it with a little bit of a critical eye. How about you, Dan? Was there something that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I'd say it's kind of similar or in the same vein. How sexism in the series was more prevalent than I remembered. And I was amazed at the number of times adult female characters were referred to as girl and made to seem like weak, stupid, vapid. Even sometimes the strongest of female characters still had male characters referring to them in those terms.
Yeah.
So, Dana, we did a bunch of counts during the series, but you've got some statistics to share with us.
The dead crewman count, Dan. At the end of season 2, we had 47 dead crewmen.
Yeah.
At the end of season 3, we only added 8.5 more.
What? That's ridiculous.
So the first 2 seasons basically, were 23.5 per season. That means it was a 36% drop in crew deaths.
Damn, there's no way I can check your math on that, but that's awesome.
And at the end of season 1, there was 26.5 dead crewmen.
Wow.
So that means there were only 20 deaths in season 2, but still the drop to 8.5 in season 3. That's just unforgivable.
There's no excuse for that. None. Zero.
So we had 13 takeovers of the Enterprise. So out of 79 episodes, that's over 16% of all the episodes.
Okay.
Another surprise for me was He's Dead was only used 23 times. That's 29% of all episodes.
Wow.
It was one of those sayings, kind of like I'm a doctor, that I thought happened all the time.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, McCoy really pissed me off because he only said I'm a doctor, not a whatever, 9 times. And I really thought it would have been like 15 or 20 times.
I totally agree.
And finally, the Prime Directive was only violated 13 times, which is 16.5% of all the episodes.
And one less time than needed for me to get popcorn from Garrett's.
Yeah, well, sorry about that.
I don't think you are, really. I think you're not that sorry. Dana, one of the best parts of doing the podcast is the interaction we had with fans. We got lots of great comments, either email, YouTube, Facebook, phone calls, but there were some really good comments that we shared during the podcast. What was one of your favorite comments?
Dan, one of them was from Mike Conrad. In season 2, he said he just listened to the Gamesters episode and loved it. He says, when you had Chekhov saying, in Russia, we were taught to kick them in the nuts. I laughed enough to almost cause an accident on I-70. He says, I'll Uber the next time I listen. He finished up by saying, oh, and I always wanted to let Shauna have access to my oeuvre.
That was a good one.
I remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Dan, do you got one you want to share?
Yeah. During season 2, our friend the Hungry Marmot wrote, I was prompted to investigate Dan's favorite subject of Uranus after your discussion about the number of sphincters in the human body. I remember that one now. Imagine my discombobulation on finding out that Uranus has multiple rings. This might well explain why it is difficult to sometimes expel solid matter during its orbit. Uranus did come up a lot in the podcast, Dana.
Yeah, you brought it up quite a bit. So,
How about another one for you, Dana?
our friend Ann wrote to us and she said, I started listening to the podcast about a month ago. And yesterday I listened to What Little Girls Are Made Of and searched Kirk and stalactite. And man, I've been traumatized. You do remember the whole stalactite thing, right? Dan?
Oh, I sure do. I sure do. And the image that we did not doctor at all, Dana. We took it right out of the episode of Kirk holding his stalactite. No wonder she was traumatized.
That's a case of images are larger than they first appear. So it's Okay, do you have another one for us, Dan?
Yeah, in season 3, Maria Kelly wrote, back in 2004, I mentioned Spock's brain in a college term paper. It got a B. Dana, do you remember? We asked her to send that paper, and she never did.
Yeah.
Dana, how about one more for you?
David wrote to us about Plato's stepchildren. The comment, the first Cosby moment in TV history had me doing a spit take. Thanks for the only very few podcasts that gives us some genuine laughs. Keep up with the great work, and I'll raise a dram to you lads. You mother flowers.
I do remember that. Well, Dana, I'm actually surprised we, meaning you as the president of the LLC, has not been sued by Bill Cosby yet.
Yeah, keep pushing it because you're on that LLC with me now. So. So, Dan, I think you've got one more you want to share?
I do, Dana. And finally, A.J. Mittendorf wrote, it's whom, not who. Whom gods destroy. Speaking as a fan and as an English professor, I give you a failing mark, thumbs down, for that error. Messing up a quote or a title when it's right there in front of you is an egregious error. AJ, I want to thank you from the bottom of Uranus for giving us material for so many jokes with the whole who versus whom thing. You truly are a learned man, a scholar, and lest we forget, a fucking douchebag.
Okay, now we're going to be testing who gets sued. Wow. Okay. I'm glad to see you're over that.
Well, Dana, you know, our listeners really, for me, made a large part of the show, and their comments, their support, sometimes their criticisms, I think really helped this podcast become what it is.
From early on, we had a lot of support. We had a lot of kind words said about the podcast. People started spreading the word for us. And I want to give a special shout out to everyone who has been communicating with us. I've got a short list here, Dan, thanks to Pam. She's also the one that made the Damn It Jim podcast, The Game.
That's right.
Olivia, Ed, Mark, Tom, Sherry, Tang, Desiree, John, Costas, Dan. That's not you.
Oh, you're not thanking me.
Tony, Frederick, Grace, Peter, Doug, Tim, Dave, Terry, Eddie, Anastasia Beaverhausen, Yvonne, John, Zachary, Peter, Hoyt, Jeff, Bob, Lori, Michelle, and so many others. All you people really made a difference in our lives. So I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I also have a few that I'd like to mention, Dana, including Matt Fleming, Lou from Canada, Olaf Olafson, Gus from Houston, Jeff from Wilmington, Illinois, JD Lewis, thank you, JD, for all the fun facts, Anthony Seclair, Bill from Lacey, Washington, and as you said, Dana, so many others. We couldn't have done it without you.
We have fun doing this, and we probably would have done the whole series if nobody was listening.
I'm not sure about this guy.
It was a lot more fun having people write to us and comment and tell us that we're doing a good job.
But hey, it's not over. Right?
Yeah.
What do we got coming up next week, Dana?
Dan, we are going to do Star Trek, the motion picture.
All right. I'm really looking forward to it. I have not seen any of these movies since they came out in the theaters.
That's just crazy. I mean, I watch almost all these movies probably once a year.
Yeah, well, I got a life, you know.
That's true.
Actually, it's not true. It's just I don't own any of the movies. All right, Dan, well, I'm really looking forward to next week. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Yeah, you too, Dan. And Thanks again to everybody who listens. Till we meet again, live long and prosper.
Thanks once again for listening to Damn It Jim, the podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Please send us an email at dammitjimpodcast@gmail.com or join the discussion on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or X. You can also call the Damn It Jim hotline at 509-676-6298. Enjoy the rest of your week, and as always, remember to live long and prosper. This has been a Ramble Jar production.